PPT. Of course.
Please, your copies. Yumebutai, the folder is Awaji.
Thank you to the chairman, thank you to the organizer, and a special thank to Romiana Senkova for inviting me to propose such an overview of the premise by which we can imagine that aqueous systems should be able to transfer biological activity through maybe electromagnetic information. So the beginning of it all was due to my degree as a medical doctor. Since, you know, when you have a degree, you assume you have all the answers. But we will try to report on the potential relevance of the electromagnetic information transfer to aqueous system procedure from the lab results to some bedside application. And we have to consider a bit an overview, and we change scale from the previous presentations. Since as a medical doctor I'm more interested at the mesoscale and the systemic level of the organism. And we have to consider the implication and the application of complementing classical cell biology by adding the biophysical description to the biochemical one. And please refer to the book if you want, it's free available on the internet or on ResearchGate. Starting with the cellular electromics through the electromagnetic homeostasis, the emerging biophysical aspects of biological organization could reliably account for health disease dynamics. This term electromics is quite new, as it resembles the sound of all omics that we are used to do in our everyday work. Consequently, a personalized biophysical toolkit integrating the electromagnetic through aqueous system procedure for the prevention and therapy of more and more disease is quickly growing. So far, indeed, electromagnetic signal has been widely considered as an epiphenomenon or a byproduct of the biochemical activity of the living organism. But today, eventually, we can consider that biophysical and biochemical aspects as a double aspect of the living being, reminding somehow the wave-particle duality characterizing the physics of the beginning of the last century. If we consider that biochemistry and biophysics are mutually interacting with each other, then we can also begin to be able to study the adaptive dynamics and consequently both the physiology and the pathophysiology from a biophysical viewpoint also. We can also remind that this cell is full of water, and this water is organized. We have different kind of water inside the cell, but bulk water is very tiny part of the whole water that is contained. Mainly is structured water, easy water, and coherence domains, as Antonella provided picture and evidence in experimental work. So following the pioneers, today we begin to consider that the endogenous electromagnetic activity can be the driver of the phenomena of embryological development, of cell differentiation, and of the physiological turnover, and during the reparative processes through stem cells commitment. And some constraints of such endogenous electromagnetic activity and recently postulated in order to define the existence, nature, and function of such a coherent state, far from thermodynamic equilibrium in biological system, to become an essential condition for the existence of life itself. And please refer to the paper of Hirschi Pokorny, if you want to go deeper in these postulates. The first postulate is the mitochondria establish the condition for the generation of the field and provide the fueling of the electromagnetic field of the cell, and such field is coherent. Endogenous electromagnetic fields contribute to self-tuning and self-regulation of metabolic processes, and are essentially non-linear. As Larissa Brishik and all his group provide for many years. Furthermore, recent studies have shown that endogenous electromagnetic activity can even guide the activity of cerebral cortex as not a byproduct of the biochemical activity due to synaptic activity. And this process leads to use of nonlinear biophysical signaling to modulate both the biochemical and the biophysical characteristic of the organism at once, sustaining as well its innate coherence and complexity. Endogenous electromagnetic signals seems to play a significant role in the synchronization of physiological activity along the chiselless adaptive dynamics is to enable allostasis as well as in the effort to restore allostasis when allostatic load has been established in the effort to cope with both endogenous and external threatening in the attempt to keep stability through dynamic changes. This is actually the true challenge of any living system. In this framework, it becomes rather obvious to consider health and disease as dynamic and unavoidable parts of the chiselless adaptive dynamics instead of separated entities to be defined and described as mutually independent. And the brain plays the most important role in these adaptive dynamics. Actually, to some extent, we need disease to strengthen health and overcome temporary frailty, and we need health to restore from disease, strength, and resilience to face successfully any future adaptive dynamics. If we consider the huge number of cells constituting a human organism, I am unable to pronounce this number if we write it down extensively. So 3.72 to 1013. And moreover, the fast turnover most of them underwent through the entire lifespan, it is quite logical to consider that only electromagnetic field fulfill the requirement to keep the stability of the entire organism in real time without loss of coherence, energy, and information. And moreover, if we consider that the default state of cells is proliferation with variation and mobility, as Carlos Sones in this group has sustained and published in many, many papers. Remarkably, it has been lately outlined that DNA electrodynamics may play a relevant role in chromatin regulation, and maybe this should be the role of so-called junk DNA. Moreover, endogenous bioelectric network may store non-genetic information during both development and regeneration, opening up to the possibility of modulating epigenetic regulation through biophysical methods. So far, medicine relies basically and almost uniquely on biochemical intervention in order to restore health. Now on, it is possible, in addition, to rely on biophysical intervention aimed to restore the self-regulation and self-regeneration capability of the organism itself by means of endogenous, external, or a combination of endogenous and external electromagnetic signals. Medical practice could take useful benefit from the integration of biophysical protocols for the therapy and prevention of an increasing number of health burdens, both acute and chronic. We can suppose that single-cell components emit electromagnetic signals, as Michael Cifra reported previously, that single-cell components need to work and place in resonance through electromagnetic signals. This is the reason by which we need such a working hypothesis to keep the coherence of the cells, at least at the cell levels, since we take in mind that in any cells we have thousands of biochemical reactions per second. It is very hard to think that biochemistry itself is able to explain how the system can keep its coherence. And so single cells, globally taken, can emit electromagnetic signals that has been measured even in a recent paper in order to find out life into space missions, to which to refer Mikael previously. They established that microscopic cantilever was able to detect life since the special feature, the special signature of life is vibration. We have also to take into account that an additional way of cell-to-cell interaction should be through electromagnetic signaling, and that single organs emit electromagnetic signals, and not only the well-acknowledged heart and brain, but very likely all organs has its own electromagnetic signature. So at the systemic level, single human organism emit specific electromagnetic signals in health and disease. So we have to look for the specific patterns that characterize, that are the hallmarks for physiological patterns and for pathological one. Maybe the same way by which in clinics we differentiate in an electrocardiogram the pathology and the physiology. It is due to variability rate. So physiological signals has high variability rate, while pathological ones are more stable. So we can imagine that such individual emitted pattern of electromagnetic signals can be recorded by a specific electromedical device and can be replayed back to the organism in order to achieve self-regulation and self-regeneration capability. So of course, there is a possibility to measure the carrying wave and the modulating wave coming from the device. And such individually recorded pattern of electromagnetic signals can be synchronously replayed to patient and to aqueous solution, employing this so-called emitters procedure that stands for electromagnetic information transfer through aqueous system. So since there are the question that we have the answer, there are lots of open questions in clinical biophysics. So for the previous of the list, we try to provide at least a working hypothesis in the short presentation before. And now we have to concentrate on the last one, that is the most intriguing one, the one that is connected with the field of aquaphotomics, by which we expect that we can have altogether some explanation of the mechanism by which we can achieve some clinical results. So the question is, do aqueous systems can store quantum of electromagnetic information? So we was able to confirm the previous report transferring the signals from a retinolysis solution to the cell culture medium of human neuroblastoma and enterocarcinoma cell line. This is the scheme of the experiment. So the retinoic acid solution was placed in the input coil, and then a carrying wave and a modulating wave was provided. The intensity was the same of the magnetic field of the heart. So we know that this Schumann resonance is the order of 7 Hertz, and the magnetic field of the heart is the order of magnitude of 50 microtesla. So, and then we replay the signals toward the cell culture medium, and then we have the two cell lines, the untreated as control and the treated one, the line 5 teratocarcinoma cell, line 5 cells and teratocarcinoma cells, and we can clearly see that the metabolic activity is clearly decreased when we use such a electronic transfer medium on both cellular lines. We can also see that there is an appearance of neurofilaments when we applied the medium conditioned with the signals from the retinoic acid, since neurofilaments are very specific of differentiation for this kind of cells. And also we can see an epigenetic effect through immunofluorescence, and we can clearly distinguish the control non-treated cells and the treated cells for neuroblastoma and teratocarcinoma cell lines. And there is also a quantitative mRNA reverse transcriptase analysis that is the proof that we have really an increase of this effect. But paying a tribute to the country that is guesting us, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, and I do and I understand. As a medical doctor, I'm basically interested in the effect, since I wanted to basically understand in which way to help people, especially for some unmet medical needs. If we have a look at the global burden of disease, we can easily see that from the first edition in 1999 to the last available, 2015, some burden has remained ranked at the same place. For instance, low back pain was ranked at the first place in the first edition and is still ranked at the first place. That means that usual chemical medication are quite unable to modify this very, very common disease. So when we are examining the possibility of using this electromagnetic information transfer procedure, we have two arms of research. The first addressing the possibility of transferring the activity of biological active molecules, and the second with the aim of transferring endogenous generated patterns of signals. We take care only of this second arm, since we wanted to avoid any competition with the pharmacological approach, and we want to build synergy with current therapy, gold standard, and we wanted to provide innovative solution to unmet medical needs nevertheless. So we translated this idea in a clinical trial that has been already published, in which we pick up the endogenous signals on the pain site, and we transfer the signals to an aqueous system that was available for self-administration by the patient itself. It was an electromagnetic signal therapy. It was regarding articular pain, that is one of the most global burden. And it was a randomized controlled trial. This is the flow chart of the study, and 150 patients were randomized in two groups: the placebo group, the biophysical, the ibuprofen group, and the biophysical one. The baseline characteristics, but they are all into the paper. The placebo group received only the solution that was untreated, since the device was switched off, while the biophysical group received the true treatment. As an active control group, we use a pharmacological group that received a golden standard medication for this disease. That was ibuprofen twice a day. And this is the result. At baseline, there was no difference in the numeric pain rating scale, but we see that at 1 week, 4 week, and 12 week, we have great differentiation between the placebo, this is the white line, and the ibuprofen group, this is the gray, and the biophysical therapy group. And this differentiation remained constant all over the observation time. So, biophysical treatment of articular pain was shown to be effective as a conventional non-steroidal anti-inflammatory treatment over a period of 3 months compared to placebo, and could therefore represent an integrative, safe and long-lasting therapy to be considered for the management of acute and particular chronic articular pain in medical practice. Remarkably, this use of a single recording procedure during the biophysical therapy protocol allowed to perform a single session of treatment with the patient. The entire sequence of the treatment lasted only 20 minutes. We was able, therefore, to save time, reducing the cost of the treatment and repetition of the therapy. Additionally, the biophysical treatment fulfilled the requirement to be considered as a personalized medication, because the pattern of endogenous signals are recorded on each side of the pain. And such patterns of endogenous electromagnetic signal are indeed unique and characteristic for any single person at any single time, unfolding the local and systemic effort made to cope with his own life experiences through faith. And the biophysical treatment become consequently a tailored procedure, provided a clinical tool for bridging the gap between the two so far separate fields of evidence-based medicine and patient-centered medicine, moving toward a medicine-based evidence. This result confirms also the hypothesis that an aqueous system can be able to record, store, and transfer biophysically active information toward different biological targets such as cell, tissue, organism, yielding synergistically local and systemic effects at once. The emerging perspective is that aqueous system could play an additional role in modulating biological function, providing basis for processing, storing, and retrieving information mediated by electromagnetic signals with both short-range and long-range, namely local and systemic effect, with potential very fruitful application in general practice. This is the sketch of the procedure, and this is the conclusion. Data from recent studies suggest that aqueous system may play a role in providing basis for recording, storing, transferring, and retrieving clinical effective quantum biological information. This feature likely enabled to trigger local and systemic self-regulation and cells regeneration potential of the organism. Since we are at the conclusion, and the conclusion is like the starting, since we are more question than answer. So the question is, please help us, physician, to find out the explanation of this process and the way by which aqueous systems should be able to transfer information. And we hope that aquaphotomics should be one of the methods that should help us in many ways in this area of research. And the last picture should be, as an Italian, from Michelangelo, and with a citation from George Lakowski. Life has been created by radiation, life is maintained by radiation, and life can be destroyed by radiation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Any question? Michael?
Thank you very much. It's really amazing. I really like the data. A lot of patients. It's very fascinating. I do not have the answers from a physical perspective, but I would like to, if I was having the device, what would be convincing for a physicist or trying to help to answer the questions you're asking, how is it happening, is to, when you are saying you're recording the signals, typically the recording can be, well, in any other signal processing you do, or on computers and mobile phones, for example, you can display the recording signal. This could be something which would help. If you record and you are looking, well, apart from your carrier and modulating way, if there is something additional, it could be of noise-like character, but it will be the only way how to mechanistically try to understand if there is any information which is recordable. Maybe it's not recordable, then we are out of the physics, which we know, but then it's a different problem. But yeah, that's my just a comment. If you ever try to...
Yes, we are on the way actually to provide an answer to this old and big question. And actually, there is a paper that has been published this year that tried to provide a first answer to this question and try to examine this process of electromagnetic information transfer to aqueous system. And I can give you the reference if you wanted to go through this paper. It's one of the first one that provided such analysis or signals analysis of this process.
Okay, that will be very interesting.
Well, we are still in the beginning in this area, so we need your cooperation as a physicist, as a biomedical engineer, computational expert, and so on, to get the full explanation of this clinical effect.
Yeah, thank you. It's very interesting data. Thank you.
Just one short question. I noticed that when you presented these levels of pain over the course of therapy with these three different sorts of therapy, so the level of pain was reported to be decreased in all patients regardless of the therapy, even in the case
yes,
of the
but you
placebo.
know that in all the study, there is always a placebo effect. This is standard.
That is actually what I wanted to ask. What is a placebo effect? Why do we have always that? Is it also some kind of received information that sort of influences?
This is very likely expectancy. And this allows your brain to start a self-regulation and self-regeneration ability somehow. But this is standard. In any clinical study, you have such an effect. So the relevant part of the study is the difference that should be big enough to differentiate the placebo and the true treatment, in this case, ibuprofen or the biophysical treatment. But this is a challenging question.
I wanted your comment.
Some physicists, as Giuseppe Vitiello, provide a possible explanation of this kind of mirroring. So your expectation acts as a mirroring effect toward your... So, and somehow should activate a kind of, let's say, resonance effect. But it's just a possible explanation.
You said that you record the signal from the healed patient, from the pain, and you use that signal to
Trigger the self-regeneration ability.
the self-regeneration. But it's a principle that is similar to the simillimum principle in homeopathy, because you are using the same signal that is associated to the illness, or not.
It is possible, but it is, in my vision, it is different. Since we use a phase separation. So maybe the effective principle rely on the fact that there is a time delay by the time on which we record the signals and the time in which we replay back the signals. So this time separation allows the organism to discriminate between the physiological and pathological signals due to the different variability rate.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you to our speaker again.